The results of the Hartlepool by-election this morning represent an earthquake in the political landscape. The Conservatives are celebrating a colossal win, but for Labour it represents a serious setback. Sir Keir Starmer and his key allies will be licking their wounds this morning and thinking about the questions it poses to his leadership in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you very much for putting your faith in me.
Keir Starmer is really facing an onslaught. On the centre, we've heard the likes of Peter Mandelson, who of course used to represent Hartlepool. He had a majority of 17,500 back in the day. It was a real safe seat, so we can see how far the constituency has come since the era of New Labour. Peter Mandelson has ascribed the disastrous results to the two C's, COVID and Corbyn. He says that the pandemic means that the population has been focused on nothing else but the virus for the past year, and that hasn't allowed Keir Starmer to really have any sort of platform to talk about Labour policies or how the party is changing. Then on the left of the party, Keir Starmer's hearing the exact opposite. The likes of Momentum have said that he needs to go in a totally new direction, much further to the left. We've heard other sort of loyal foot soldiers of Corbyn, like Richard Bergen, Diane Abbott, also come out this morning saying that there needs to be a change of strategy from Labour and it really needs to move towards a more socialist position. I think we're going to see two things in the days ahead. One is a very narrow forensic dissection of mistakes made in the strategy for the by-election, and the second is wider soul-searching about Labour's message to the public at large. Secondly, there are other insiders in Labour who are really banging their heads against the wall that the party, which it was in the gift of Labour to choose the timing of this by-election, why to time it alongside a mayoral contest in which the local mayor, the Conservative candidate Ben Houchen, was so popular. That means that many Conservatives who wanted to come out and vote for the mayor would also already be at the polling station and would therefore tick the Conservative box on the ballot when it came to the MP contest. I think there is something in that. Defenders of that strategy in Labour say the party didn't really have enough money to campaign on two different fronts for two different dates, and it made sense financially to throw it all into the same leaflets promoting an MP candidate, a mayoral candidate. These missteps will give way to much bigger questions about Keir Starmer's strategy and his cut-through with the public. His allies are out in force this morning saying that he hasn't had enough time to really rebuild trust with the public following the Corbyn defeat of 2019, which was Labour's worst result since 1935. I think what we've seen in Hartlepool really speaks to major problems ahead for Labour. In recent weeks ahead of the poll, we'd already seen opinion surveys suggesting that the party was losing traction with C2DE voters, those on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, i.e. the blue-collar workers who are the traditional ballast of Labour's vote. If it's the case that the Conservatives are really sweeping up that vote across England, then I think that is a major problem for the party. There are people out this morning saying that the plight facing Labour is worse than the 1980s, where some people thought the party was in terminal decline. Others in recent weeks have been arguing that it's a stranger bind that the party's in. It's in this situation where it's too strong to die, but it's too weak to win. And so there is the sort of sense that unless they change strategy and really come up with something more eye-catching to voters, that they will limp on, but without kind of ever coming to victory, at least in the short to medium term. I think Sir Keir Starmer faces a big challenge ahead on several fronts. I think on personnel there is a sense that his current shadow cabinet lacks visibility and real big hitters, so I think we're likely to see a reshuffle in the weeks ahead for him to try and reset his leadership, perhaps bring on board some of those well-known high-profile MPs that are currently on his backbenches, perhaps Yvette Cooper, perhaps Hilary Benn. I also think strategy-wise, they'll really need to think about the policies that can try and win back some of those voters in England, in rural and suburban communities, to make sure that they haven't just backed themselves into a corner where the only place they're winning is in cities.